Imagine walking into your local grocery store tomorrow and noticing something strange. The shelves aren't as full as they used to be, and some of your favorite imported products, Italian wine, Australian beef, Mexican avocados, are suddenly missing. At first, you might shrug it off as a temporary shortage, but what's happening is much bigger than that. The United States, long considered the world's most reliable trade partner, is quietly losing ground. 11 countries have already redirected their exports to Canada, and the consequences are already trickling into your daily life. This is not just about economics, it's about what you eat, what you pay, and the way entire industries operate. Today, we're going to break down the countries making the shift, the products involved, and why this matters more than most Americans realize. By the end of this video, you'll see that this is a real, tangible shift that touches everyone. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. If you want to stay ahead of these global shifts that are quietly reshaping your groceries, your bills, and even your favorite products, this is the place to be. Comment below which item you're most worried might disappear next. You'll be surprised at how real this problem already is. Don't just watch the story unfold, be part of the conversation and stay informed before it hits your daily life. The US losing its global edge. For decades, the United States has been the ultimate destination for exporters worldwide. Countries producing everything from wine and cheese to beef, grains, and electronics relied heavily on the American market. It wasn't just about selling products, it was about stability, profitability, and predictable demand. Businesses trusted the US as a market where products would move quickly, profits would be reliable, and supply chains would function smoothly. Consumers benefited as well, enjoying a wide variety of imported goods at competitive prices. But over the past year, that position has started to erode, and the shift is visible in ways that most people don't immediately notice. Exports that once flowed steadily into the United States are being rerouted to Canada, and this movement is already affecting grocery shelves, restaurant menus, and industrial supply chains. Several factors explain why the US is losing its edge. Political and trade uncertainties have made exporting to America riskier than ever. Frequent changes in tariffs, trade wars, and unpredictable regulations create an environment where exporters cannot plan with confidence. Even a small change in policy can mean significant costs or delays for businesses trying to reach the US market. On top of that, logistical challenges are creating major headaches. American ports are congested, shipping times are increasingly unreliable, and every delay adds costs for exporters. Canada, by contrast, has smoother customs processes, faster shipping, and modern infrastructure that makes exporting simpler and more profitable. Additionally, rising prices in the United States due to tariffs and supply chain inefficiencies discourage foreign producers from sending goods south. When other markets promise stability, quicker payments, and lower costs, it's natural for exporters to shift their focus, and that is precisely what we are seeing now. Italy, wine and olive oil flowing north. Italy has long been one of the top suppliers of wine and olive oil to the US, and these products have been staples on American grocery shelves for decades. Italian wines, from bold reds of Tuscany to crisp whites of Veneto, and extra virgin olive oils from Liguria and Puglia, have become household names in the United States. But in recent months, Italian producers are increasingly sending their goods to Canada instead. This shift is driven by several factors. Canadian consumers are demonstrating a strong appetite for high-quality Italian products, and they are willing to pay premium prices without hesitation. Wine shops, specialty stores, and even mainstream grocery chains in Canada are stocking Italian products faster and in larger quantities, signaling strong demand. Meanwhile, Canada's trade policies are far more predictable than those in the United States, with lower tariffs, simpler import regulations, and faster customs procedures that reduce delays and risk for exporters. Italian producers can now plan shipments with confidence, knowing that their goods will arrive on time and sell at profitable prices. The result is a market that offers more profit with less risk, which naturally attracts exporters who once relied heavily on the US. For Americans, the consequences are already noticeable. Grocery store shelves may become less stocked with Italian wine and olive oil, and prices for what remains could rise significantly. Beyond the store, restaurants and specialty cafes that relied on consistent imports may also feel the impact, forcing them to either pay more or substitute with lower quality alternatives. This is a clear example of how even a seemingly small change in trade patterns can ripple into everyday life, subtly reshaping what consumers have taken for granted for years. What was once a familiar part of dinner tables and culinary routines is now subject to the shifting tides of global trade, showing just how interconnected international markets and our daily choices really are. Australia, beef and lamb redirection. Australia's red meat industry has historically relied heavily on the US market, particularly for high-quality beef and lamb exports. For years, American consumers have enjoyed the rich flavors of Australian grass-fed beef and tender lamb, whether in grocery stores or on restaurant menus. However, rising tariffs and stricter inspection requirements in the United States have made exporting more difficult, costly, and less profitable for Australian producers. Every additional regulation, inspection, or tax creates delays, increases costs, and introduces uncertainty, which discourages exporters from relying solely on the US market. At the same time, Canada presents a much more attractive alternative. Canadian buyers are eager for quality Australian meat, and predictable trade agreements, lower tariffs, and efficient customs processes make shipping to Canada faster, cheaper, and less risky. Canadian supermarkets, specialty meat markets, and food service providers have all increased their demand for Australian beef and lamb, creating a stable, reliable market that promises consistent sales and profits. This shift is not just a matter of trade, it affects the way supply chains are structured. The redirection of these exports has implications far beyond grocery shelves. Restaurants, catering services, and food delivery businesses in the US may experience reduced availability or higher prices for premium cuts of meat. Even local butchers may struggle to source specific cuts that were previously abundant. As more Australian meat heads north, American consumers could face gradually rising prices, limited variety, and sometimes longer wait times for certain products. This situation highlights the ripple effect of global trade decisions. When one country changes its export focus, it doesn't just affect businesses, it eventually touches the dinner table of everyday Americans, subtly reshaping the domestic market over time. Mexico, fruits and produce shifting north. Mexico has been a critical supplier of fresh produce to the United States for decades, from avocados and berries to citrus fruits. American households have come to rely on the steady supply of these staples, whether for morning smoothies, lunch salads, or family dinners. But increasingly, Mexican exporters are choosing Canada over the US. The reasons are familiar: Canada offers stability, predictable trade agreements, and a growing consumer base willing to pay for fresh, high-quality produce. Canadian supermarkets, specialty markets, and even local farmers' cooperatives have ramped up demand, offering consistent contracts and smoother logistics that reduce delays and losses. For years, American consumers took for granted that Mexican produce would be readily available and affordable. Shoppers could pick up avocados, berries, and citrus fruits almost any time of the year without worrying about shortages. Now, as exports are redirected to Canada, that certainty is beginning to fade. Supermarkets may face gaps in supply during peak seasons, and prices for fresh produce may climb steadily. Even high-demand items like strawberries or mangoes could become inconsistent in quality or availability. This shift highlights a larger lesson about global trade. Everyday items, even fruits and vegetables, are subject to complex international factors, from tariffs and regulations to consumer demand in other countries. Restaurants and food service providers are also feeling the ripple effect. Chefs may have to adjust menus, source alternative ingredients, or pay more for premium Mexican produce. Small businesses and boutique cafes that specialize in authentic Mexican flavors could struggle to maintain consistent quality. Beyond the kitchen, these changes subtly influence lifestyle and consumption patterns, reminding Americans that global supply chains touch every part of daily life, often in ways that are easy to overlook until shelves are emptier and prices are higher. France, luxury foods at risk. France presents one of the most significant warnings for American consumers. French cheese, wine, and other specialty foods have long been synonymous with fine dining, gourmet cooking, and everyday indulgence. Brie, Camembert, Bordeaux wines, and delicate pastries have found homes on American tables for decades. But in the past year, an increasing share of these products is going to Canada instead. Canadian consumers are demonstrating a strong appetite for premium French products, and trade policies make exporting north far more predictable and profitable. Lower tariffs, smoother customs processing, and consistent demand create a market that French producers find irresistible. The impact on the United States is potentially severe. Some estimates suggest that up to 40% of certain imported French goods could disappear from American shelves if this trend continues. Grocery stores may see reduced stock of cheeses, wines, and specialty items, leading to higher prices and occasional scarcity. Restaurants and catering services that rely on authentic French ingredients may face similar challenges, forcing them to substitute or pay more for imported goods. This could fundamentally change dining experiences, both at home and in fine dining establishments. These changes illustrate how interconnected global supply chains are. A decision made halfway across the world can filter down to a family dinner or a special night out. Even for consumers who may not frequent high-end restaurants, the ripple effects are real. Reduced variety, higher prices, and occasional shortages subtly alter consumption patterns. Specialty dishes, once considered easy to prepare at home, may require substitutions or may become more expensive to enjoy. This scenario highlights a broader lesson about global trade. No matter how ordinary or everyday a product seems, it is deeply influenced by international markets, regulations, and consumer demand elsewhere. Understanding these connections helps illustrate why shifts like chili redirecting exports to Canada are not just statistics, they are changes that Americans experience at the grocery store, the kitchen table, and the dinner plate. Germany, machinery and industrial supplies. Germany is known worldwide for its precision machinery, industrial equipment, and high-quality automotive parts. These exports have long supplied American manufacturers, fueling production in factories across the country, from automotive assembly lines to heavy machinery operations. German machinery is valued not just for its durability but for the consistency it brings to production, helping U.S. manufacturers maintain efficiency and output. However, Germany is increasingly directing some of these goods to Canada instead. The reasons are familiar. Canada offers predictable trade regulations, faster logistics, and stable demand, reducing risk for exporters. For American manufacturers, this redirection could have cascading effects. Higher costs for machinery and parts may force companies to adjust pricing or slow production timelines. Some industries may experience temporary shortages of critical components, affecting everything from automobiles to consumer electronics. This shift demonstrates that trade changes are not limited to food and beverages. Industrial supply chains, often invisible to the average consumer, have direct consequences on everyday products. Delays in machinery or components can lead to higher prices for finished goods, extended wait times for cars or appliances, and ultimately impact the overall cost of living. It's a reminder that global trade decisions affect everyone, often in ways we don't immediately notice. Japan, electronics and automotive components. Japan has traditionally been a key supplier of electronics and automotive components to the U.S. market. Components like semiconductors, engine parts, and advanced electronics have long been integral to manufacturing cars, laptops, and other essential products. Recently, many of these exports have been redirected to Canada, where trade conditions are more predictable and profitable. Canadian importers benefit from stable tariffs, reliable shipping, and growing consumer demand, which makes exporting north far more appealing for Japanese producers. For American companies relying on these parts, this shift could result in production delays, increased manufacturing costs, and even temporary shortages of key products. These disruptions are not confined to factories, they ripple through to retailers and ultimately consumers, affecting the availability and pricing of electronics, cars, and other essential goods. Even everyday items, from smartphones to home appliances, could experience delays or higher costs due to this shift in supply. This situation highlights the interconnectedness of global supply chains. When one country redirects exports, it affects multiple industries, showing how international trade decisions made thousands of miles away can influence products and pricing on American shelves and in homes across the country. Brazil, soybeans and coffee moving north. Brazil has long been a major exporter of soybeans and coffee to the United States, two staples that affect both agriculture and daily consumption. Soybeans are essential for livestock feed, cooking oils, and a range of processed foods, while Brazilian coffee has been a favorite of American households for generations. However, a growing portion of these exports is now heading to Canada. The factors driving this shift include more predictable trade agreements, reduced tariffs, and a reliable market that ensures timely payments and consistent demand. For American consumers, the consequences could be noticeable. Prices for soy-based products, meat, and even dairy may increase as production costs rise due to reduced availability of soybean feed. Coffee lovers may see higher prices or fewer specialty beans in stores, impacting morning routines and cafe menus. Farmers, distributors, and food processors are all affected, highlighting how global trade decisions filter down through the entire supply chain. What starts as a decision by Brazilian exporters ultimately touches grocery shelves, coffee shops, and kitchens across the U.S. This realignment underscores that trade is not an abstract concept, it directly influences what Americans eat, drink, and pay for every day. Netherlands, flours and specialty foods. The Netherlands, known for its flours, cheeses, and specialty foods, has also begun favoring Canada over the U.S. for exports. Dutch tulips, artisanal cheeses, and gourmet delicacies have long been popular in American markets, forming part of both everyday consumption and cultural traditions. Canadian markets offer stable demand, predictable shipping schedules, and favorable tariffs, making them increasingly attractive for Dutch exporters. For American consumers, this redirection could result in fewer imported flours, specialty cheeses, and gourmet products, particularly affecting seasonal traditions and holiday markets. Florists may struggle to source certain varieties of tulips or other flowers, grocery stores might see smaller selections of imported cheeses, and restaurants may face higher costs or limited availability for premium ingredients. Even seemingly minor products, like specialty chocolates or regional pastries, could become more expensive or harder to find. This example illustrates how trade shifts subtly reshape the landscape of consumer choice. The products may appear small, but their absence or increased cost touches everyday life, from gifts and celebrations to meal planning and culinary experiences, demonstrating that global trade decisions can have surprisingly local effects. Spain, citrus and olive oil. Spain has historically supplied the U.S. with citrus fruits and olive oil, both staples in many households. Oranges, lemons, and mandarins, along with high-quality olive oils, have been part of American kitchens for decades. Recently, exports are increasingly being directed to Canada. The combination of lower tariffs, quicker delivery, and strong Canadian demand makes the northern neighbor more attractive to Spanish producers. This redirection is not just about economics, it influences availability in everyday life. American consumers may notice the difference in price, availability, and quality, particularly in regions where these products are heavily consumed. Over time, less consistent access to Spanish citrus and olive oil could lead grocery stores to adjust their offerings or raise prices. This shift is another reminder that global trade patterns are fluid, and countries will follow the path that maximizes stability, efficiency, and profit. Even something as ordinary as a morning orange juice or salad dressing can be affected by international trade decisions far from home. New Zealand, lamb and dairy. New Zealand, known for its lamb and dairy products, has increasingly directed exports to Canada. Premium cuts of lamb, high-quality cheeses, and dairy staples like butter and milk powder have been mainstays in American grocery stores for years. Reliable trade agreements, predictable tariffs, and consistent consumer demand make Canada the preferred destination for New Zealand producers. For American grocery stores, this could mean reduced supplies of imported lamb and dairy products, potentially affecting prices and menu options in restaurants and catering businesses. Consumers may notice higher prices or less variety in specialty cheeses and lamb cuts. This final example completes the list of 11 countries whose exports are shifting north, demonstrating a clear and significant trend in global trade. The shift underscores that international trade is not static, markets evolve based on stability, profit, and consumer demand, and the U.S. may find itself increasingly competing with Canada for access to these essential imports. Impact on American consumers. These trade shifts are not abstract economic events, they directly affect everyday life. Imported goods are becoming more expensive, less available, and sometimes completely absent from stores, and the effect is cumulative. For example, a missing Italian wine, a scarce Australian lamb cut, or delayed electronics from Japan can ripple across multiple sectors, creating higher prices for consumers. Restaurants face higher costs and limited options, forcing menu changes or price increases, and even small delays in shipping can disrupt entire supply chains. Shoppers may notice fewer choices in their weekly grocery trips, while specialty stores and food service providers struggle to maintain consistent offerings. Consumers are beginning to feel the consequences in their wallets, kitchens, and even dining experiences, illustrating that global trade is more than just numbers, it impacts daily life in very tangible ways, shaping habits, preferences, and budgets. Industries at risk. Beyond grocery stores and restaurants, entire industries are affected by these trade shifts. Food and beverage importers face challenges sourcing specialty products, while agriculture may lose international buyers, affecting domestic prices and demand. Manufacturing and automotive industries, reliant on parts from Germany, Japan, and other countries, could experience production delays or higher costs, slowing operations and limiting product availability. Retailers face inventory management challenges, and consumers ultimately bear the consequences. Even seemingly unrelated sectors, like electronics and luxury goods, feel the ripple effect of these shifts. This trade realignment shows that disruptions in global supply chains are not isolated, they influence multiple sectors of the economy simultaneously. Planning, risk management, and supply chain diversification are becoming essential for businesses to survive and thrive in this new trade environment. Why Canada is winning. Canada's success in attracting these exports is no accident. Its proximity to major production hubs makes shipping routes shorter, faster, and cheaper. Trade policies are stable, tariffs are lower, and agreements are predictable, reducing risk for exporters. Canadian consumers are affluent and willing to pay for quality imports, providing consistent demand that reassures producers. Logistics infrastructure, including ports, highways, and rail networks, is reliable, minimizing delays and spoilage. Combined, these advantages make Canada an appealing, profitable, and dependable market for exporters who once focused on the United States. For American businesses, this means increased competition for products, delayed deliveries, and higher costs, while for consumers, it may translate into rising prices and reduced availability of imported goods. What the future holds. If these trends continue, more countries may follow, further reducing U.S. import volumes and raising prices for everyday goods. Industries could face serious supply challenges, from grocery products to industrial components, while Canadian influence in global trade continues to grow. Americans may see fewer choices, higher costs, and disrupted supply chains in multiple sectors, and reliance on other countries may increase. The implications are far-reaching, touching everything from what ends up on grocery shelves to the availability of critical industrial components for manufacturing. Consumers, businesses, and policymakers will all need to adapt to the shifting trade landscape, making strategic planning and awareness essential to minimize the impact of these global shifts on daily life and the economy. This is a wake-up call. 11 countries have already chosen Canada over the US, and the ripple effects are reaching American consumers, businesses, and industries in ways that are tangible and immediate. Trade is not just a series of numbers, statistics, or agreements, it affects your groceries, your wallets, and your daily life. From wine and olive oil to electronics and industrial parts, the products you rely on are increasingly being redirected, and the impact will only grow if current trends continue. Staying informed is no longer optional, it's essential. Follow these developments closely, and think about how global trade shifts might affect your household, your favorite restaurants, and even your work or hobbies that rely on imported goods. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to never miss an update, and share your thoughts in the comments. Which product are you most worried about disappearing next? Join the conversation and alert others. Awareness is the first step in adapting to this new reality, and being proactive ensures you're prepared for changes in prices, availability, and daily life. Global trade is evolving rapidly, and understanding these shifts now will give you an edge in navigating the changes ahead.